Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Sarasota and Lakewood Ranch. My name is Mary Lou Keller, and I'm a member of the Worship Committee, which coordinates Sunday services when our ministers are away. I hope you're all staying safe and well this summer, and I look forward to meeting in person starting August 15th. If you're planning to attend in person, please fill out the short survey in the contact newsletter so that we can estimate attendance. But remember, we will continue to live stream the services if that feels safer for you. I would like to extend a special welcome to any visitors we have today and invite you to visit the church website, Visitors Center, where you can find a banner, a link to, on the homepage, banner marked Welcome Visitors. We also invite you to register on our virtual guest book so we can send you our newsletter, The Contact, to help you get to know us better. The church remains physically closed, but you're welcome to attend our many virtual events, and you can get Zoom links by signing the virtual guest book. Our financial needs do continue, so please consider giving by clicking on the Donate button, which is visible when you open the homepage of our website. This is the fourth Sunday of the month, and on every fourth Sunday, we have a Share the Plate donation that goes to a nonprofit organization chosen by the church's Social Justice Committee. This month, your donation will go to Unidos Now. The mission of Unidos Now is to elevate the quality of life of the growing Hispanic Latino community through education, integration, and civic engagement. Programs include year-round clubs, student-parent activities, college preparatory programs, and the Future Leaders Academy, to name a few. See this link for more information on Unidos Now, https://unidosnow.org/. And give generously by donating there or sending a check to the church office with Unidos Now in the subject line. I've had the pleasure to work indirectly with Unidos Now for several years as I mentor a young Mexican woman and her 2 children, which we're hoping to get into college. And the programs are outstanding. In a few moments, we will light the chalice here in the sanctuary, and I hope you will join us by lighting a candle or your own chalice at home. This would be the perfect time to retrieve that during our musical interlude. We begin our service with a prelude by Don Bryn. Thank you, Don. We look forward to seeing you in person soon. I'm pleased to introduce our speaker for today, the Reverend Brock Leach. Brock is an affiliated community minister of the UU Church of Sarasota, and he works for the Unitarian Universalist Association supporting religious innovators who are developing new forms of UU community that meet the needs of people who are underserved in our typical congregations. Locally, Brock volunteers on the boards of Children First, Sarasota County's Head Start Agency, the Education Foundation of Sarasota County, the Sarasota African American Cultural Coalition, and he chairs the professional advisory group for the spiritual care at Tampa General Hospital. He also serves on the National Board of Protect Our Defenders and the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, UUSC, the denomination's international human rights agency where he was formerly on staff. Prior to ministry, Brock had a 24-year career as an executive for PepsiCo. He has a BA in economics from the University of Colorado Boulder, an MBA in finance and marketing from the University of Chicago, and a Master of Divinity from Meadville Lombard Theological School in Chicago. He's currently a Doctor of Ministry student at the Boston University's School of Theology. You haven't gotten the memo about retiring yet, have you, Brock? Welcome back to our pulpit, Brock.
Well, thank you, Mary Lou. It is always good to be back home in my home church. We're going to light our chalice this morning with these opening words by Kenneth Patton.
Let us worship with our eyes and ears and fingertips.
Let us love the world through heart and mind and body.
We feed our eyes upon the mystery and revelation in the faces of our brothers and sisters.
We seek to know the wistfulness of the very young and the very old, the wistfulness of people in all times of life.
We seek to understand the shyness behind arrogance, the fear behind pride, the tenderness behind clumsy strength, the anguish behind cruelty.
All life flows into a great common life if we only open our eyes to our companions.
Let us worship, not in bowing down, not with closed eyes and stopped ears.
Let us worship with the opening of all the windows of our beings, with the full outstretching of our spirits.
Life comes with singing and laughing, with tears and confiding, with a rising wave too great to be held in the heart and body, to those who have fallen in love with life.
Let us worship and let us learn to love. And now, if you will please join in singing hymn number 163, For the Earth Forever Turning.
Our centering today is by Annie Dillard. We are here to abet creation and to witness to it, to notice each other's beautiful face and complex nature, so that creation need not play to an empty house. Now please join us for a moment of silence.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life and shape of justice. Roots hold me close, winds set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Our reading this morning is by Stephen Mitchell. It's his interpretation of Psalm 1. Blessed are the man and the woman who have grown beyond their greed and put an end to their hatred and no longer nourish illusions. But they delight in the way things are, and they keep their hearts open day and night. They are like trees planted near flowing rivers, which bear fruit when they are ready. Their leaves will not fall or wither. Everything they do will succeed. Like most people, or at least the men I know, I'm pretty good at avoiding uncomfortable reality. Oh, that's not really a problem with the air conditioning. We just left the patio door open too long. That tire looks soft. Maybe I hit a curb and knocked some air out of it. If it were a nail, it would already be flat. Oh, that pain in my groin? That can't be a hernia. It must be those damn sit-ups. But sooner or later, when the weight of evidence is too great to ignore, I'm forced to confront the reality that I have a problem that needs fixing. The good news is that once I actually confront reality, all the subconscious anxiety that I was storing up is released and washes over me. The fever breaks. Suddenly, the reality isn't quite as bad as I was subconsciously imagining, and I realized, hey, I could do something about that. When I think about the state of the world right now, I am starting to have that feeling. The headlines of the last year, even the last few weeks, tell a story that cannot be ignored. The whole human race engulfed in a pandemic that is evolving into an ongoing, though less deadly, threat. The heat dome, drought, and wildfires in the West. The historic floods in Germany. The red tide in Tampa Bay, resulting in part from the spill at Piney Point. These are not isolated, random events. They are undeniable signs that we human beings are pushing up against the limits of what the natural world can sustain. Something has to give, and it has to be us. Now, I know I'm preaching to the virtual choir here, but the reality is that in our generation, and maybe the next one or two, we are the first in human history to fully face the ultimate limits of human population and consumption. We have no choice but to cross the Rubicon to a new way of living. And I want to suggest that maybe if we face that reality squarely, it could be a better way of living. What if confronting reality steers our evolutionary impulse away from lives of consumption to lives that are more abundant in the ways that actually matter to people? I got thinking about this when reading some recent news stories about how the pandemic accelerated the decline in birth rates that was already happening around the world to record lows. The US birth rate is the lowest it's ever been. And the fertility rate, the average number of babies expected to be born to a woman over her lifetime, has fallen to 1.7. And this is happening around the world as countries rise above economic subsistence and women gain rights. The global fertility rate has decreased to 2.4 births per woman, half of what it was in 1950. And countries like South Korea are down to 1, far below the rates that would sustain current population levels. Most of the articles I read, though, portrayed this as an existential threat to the economic order. It would wreak havoc on Social Security, unfairly burden future generations, and certainly result in declining gross domestic product. I found myself thinking, yeah, but maybe it's also a sign that young people are confronting the reality of human limits. What a great thing that would be. Moreover, population growth doesn't appear to be the most pressing problem. Just maybe after reaching a certain point of relative economic security and stability, prosperity, which all human beings deserve, just maybe the almighty GDP isn't really what matters. I mean, in a moment when billionaires are blasting themselves into space and the Dow has crossed 35,000, can we really say that all our material prosperity has made Americans as a whole healthier, happier, and more fulfilled? The short answer is no. It's the subject of a different sermon, but the truth is that by almost every measure, Americans in total are less healthy. Life expectancy is actually declining for the first time. Last year, it fell by 1.5 years because of the pandemic, but US life expectancy peaked in 2014 and has been on a decline ever since. Despite modern medicine's ability to treat acute disease, lifestyle-related conditions like diabetes and liver disease continue to rise. And we're less happy as measured by rising levels of depression and anxiety and so-called diseases of despair, like addiction and suicide. We are not living in a way that promotes health and happiness. For our society as a whole, we're actually reaching the point where more consumption makes us sicker and sadder. But even more concerning to me, we are more isolated and self-absorbed than ever. And our kids are paying the price for it. More than anything else, kids need the love and support of trusted adults in their lives to help them find their way. But they're not getting the attention they need, even as they face a more complicated and uncertain future. Bill Damon of the Stanford Center for Adolescence has shown that more kids are coming to adulthood without any sense of who they are or what they're meant to do, or confidence that they can make their way in the world. Here in Sarasota County, which has an A-rated school district, 92% of our kids graduate from high school. That's great. But 45% of those graduates have no plan for what comes next. They don't have a job, they're not enrolled in technical school, they have no plans for college. They are adrift. It's a trend that's true across the country, and it's been building for several decades. Damon's research led to a Stanford startup called Project Wayfinder, which is a school-based program to help kids find their purpose in life. They repeatedly ask kids to answer 3 questions. What do I do well? What do I love to do? They're not necessarily the same thing. And what matters to me? And they define purpose as the place where the answers to those 3 questions come together. With students in the lead, the support of parents and teachers and other adults, and more opportunities to experience themselves in the world, kids figure it out. They're able to steer a course for their lives with more confidence. I don't know any parents who neglect their children on purpose. The problem has to do with inequity, which forces many families into survival mode. Some of it has to do with the rise in single-parent families and the separation from extended families. But a lot of it has to do with our confusion about what matters. Families neglecting what their own kids really need in pursuit of an income and a lifestyle that they're told represents success and yet is unattainable for most. Adam Grant, a behavioral psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania, wrote an article recently about what he says is the dominant emotion in America right now. He calls it languishing. In psychology, languishing is that emotional state midway between depression and flourishing. He describes flourishing as the peak of well-being, where you have a strong sense of meaning, mastery, and mattering to others. Meaning, mastery, and mattering to others. Languishing, on the other hand, is when you feel joyless and aimless. You feel like you're stagnating. It feels, he says, like you're muddling through your days, looking at your life through a foggy windshield. I know I've had a few days like that. Grant's thesis is that the isolation of the pandemic has, of course, created more anxiety and depression and grief for all those who suffered losses. But the wider repercussion is that it's cut most of us off from the means to actually flourish. Add to that growing anxiety about the future of the world, and most of us end up languishing. The antidote to languishing is at least occasionally experiencing what psychologists call flow. Grant says that's a state of absorption in a meaningful challenge or momentary bond, where your sense of time, place, and self melts away. He adds that the most important factor in daily joy and motivation is a sense of progress, not on a grand scale, but progress on small projects of what he calls just manageable difficulty. Those flow moments might involve deep self-expression of passions or talents or calling. They might be moments lost in the joys of community or shared work. You can probably recall some of your own flow moments. And that's important because they reveal what really matters to your living. I'll bet they're always some combination of two things: expressing your own sense of unique purpose in the world and strengthening your connection to the rest of life. Maybe that's in the natural world or with peoples and animals and communities that you care most about. Experiencing those meaningful challenges and bonds also requires some uninterrupted time when released from all the distractions of our virtual and real lives. And it requires real connections to all the lives we care about. Both of those have been in short supply for the last year and a half. And notice that while these moments require a bit of economic security and social stability, they are not principally about consumption. They're really about what Ken Patton talked about in our opening words, when he invited the opening of all the windows of our beings, the full outstretching of our spirits. Still, there's that pervasive question that dominates the headlines. So what about GDP? If we want to actually live in accord with what really matters, do we also have to dismantle the whole global economic system? Personally, I don't think so. Now, I have to confess that I'm a capitalist, although I know that is not a popular thing to say in some progressive circles. When I refer to capitalism, though, I mean the system by which markets have always deployed labor and capital to connect the producers of goods and services with the users. Markets have been a part of human experience at the beginning of history. They've operated in all kinds of forms of government. And over the last several hundred years, they've been the principal agent in bringing about a remarkable global rise in prosperity and longevity in even the poorest corners of the world. Don't get me wrong. I think American capitalism is in serious need of reform, particularly in preventing financial exploitation and reducing inequality and redistributing economic power. I lean toward the Scandinavian model of democratic socialist capitalism. But open and inclusive markets are the best way yet devised for empowering people to express their individual talents in service of the most people. The problem is that markets mostly value what we pay for, not what actually matters to us. And those are increasingly not the same thing. What originally mattered most urgently to us were food, shelter, and security. They are still foundational. But there's no doubt that what matters most urgently to most of us right now is meaning. If you think about what we pay for and what matters to us as two overlapping circles in a Venn diagram, the two were pretty closely overlapped for most of human existence. But increasingly over the last century or so, they've diverged. Instead of struggling for the tangible necessities of life, we are increasingly desperate for the intangible sources of well-being found in self-expression and relationship. But how do we reconcile that separation? I don't really see us returning to an economic past where we rely exclusively on local markets to grow our own food or make our goods or provide our own transportation, although I hope we do a lot more of all that. But I aspire to a future where we invest a lot more of our human capital in building communities in which people are able to pursue their individual dreams and callings while caring for one another and for future generations, where meaning takes center stage. And much of that does have to happen locally. So I wonder whether there's an opportunity to bring markets and meaning into closer alignment. Technology clearly carries its own harms and risks, as we all know. But automation and artificial intelligence can be harnessed to reduce human drudgery and meaningless, unsafe work. The productivity it generates could make it possible to have the goods and services we need, even in our aging as the birth rate drops. It could create the time and energy for all of us to pursue meaning. It's even possible that we could decide to pay for what matters. We're already paying for more mental health services, individually and as a society. The only limitation there is that we're paying more for treatment of illness than we are for maintenance of well-being, but it's all good. And there are signs that that's even starting to change, even in our public schools. And what organizations are more central to purpose and meaning making than congregations? In my work for the UUA, I often run across innovators who are building new forms of religious community that are turning the traditional church model inside out. Instead of focusing most of their resources on collective activities like worship, they're focusing more of them on helping individuals on a journey of self-discovery, finding their own unique sense of purpose or reconnecting with it, and helping them realize it with the support of a whole community. And many of these communities are not financed principally by plate collections or pledges, important though they may be. Some are providing ministry on a fee-for-service basis with a sliding income scale. Others offer things like yoga and meditation classes for a fee. Or the community works together to fund themselves by running a bakery or a brewery, coffee house, all of which also help to foster a larger sense of community. These models put an explicit price on meaning-making services, but remain available to everybody, and they're more financially sustainable. And when it comes to our kids, what if we actually paid caregivers and teachers at a level that reflects the real importance of the work they do? We already have the economic means to do that. We just need to explicitly recognize how much it matters. All these are ways we might gradually bring those two circles of the Venn diagram back into alignment in order to foster more meaning. They're the kind of ideas we can hope for and work toward. It's even possible that as we face the reality of the planet's limits, our evolutionary drive to survive will compel us to center meaning in our lives. And that might become the new measure of our success. I am hopeful that will happen, but I'm not sure we can realistically count on it in our lifetimes. Meanwhile, though, you and I are not bid to await some cosmic vision of a world yet to come. We are bid to live fully in the present. If we can face the reality of the world's limits, we can also face the reality that what ultimately matters in human life is meaning. And there's no limit to the meaning that we can make together. We can choose to leave our languishing behind and cultivate more flourishing. We can start by reconnecting with our own unique sense of purpose as individuals, that intersection of what we do well and what we love to do and what matters to us. Maybe we could explore purpose as a small group ministry right here in our church. I'm interested in facilitating something like that. So if it sounds interesting or meaningful to you, just drop me an email at brock.leach@icloud.com. If there's enough interest, we might pull that together. Then, grounded in individual purpose, we can strengthen the real relationships that matter, experience real aspects of the natural world, enjoy real beauty and enriching cultural diversity, do real shoulder-to-shoulder work that makes the world just a little bit better. Maybe we could take on some of those projects of just manageable difficulty that Adam Grant talked about. Along the way, we might learn to really love one another a little more. As Stephen Mitchell wrote, in his interpretation of the first Psalm. Blessed are the men and women who have grown beyond their greed and put an end to their hatred and no longer nourish illusions. But they delight in the way things are and keep their hearts open day and night. Then everything they do will succeed. And now, please join me as you're able in singing hymn number 16, "'Tis a Gift to Be Simple."
Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right. 'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, 'twill be in the valley of love and delight. When true simplicity is gained, to bow and to bend we shan't be ashamed. To turn will be our delight, till by turning we come round right.
Our closing words are by Emil Gudmundsson. And now, may we have faith in life to do wise planting, that the generations to come may reap even more abundantly than we. May we be bold in bringing to fruition the golden dreams of human kinship and justice. This we ask, that the fields of promise become fields of reality. And we'll now extinguish the chalice.